Hello everyone, I'm Lynnette. This is actually my first vlog, so it's gonna probably be a disaster. But not only is it gonna be a disaster, I have to do it within 45 minutes before my lunch break. So I'm going to discuss a lot of things in regards to how to pick your location when you decide to teach English abroad. Everything from the pay, the perks that you may get, the degrees you may have to obtain before you go, lifestyle changes, things you should keep into account or take into account, teaching conditions, traveling, language, and culture, which I think are things that we don't ask ourselves before we embark in something as grand as this. And there is a lot of information, but I also feel that a lot of the information is like romanticized. And if you hear any of the kids running around, it's because it's lunchtime and they're about to go play. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one. Okay, so I got a little disturbance, but it was good. So the first one obviously is pay. Who are we kidding? Obviously, teaching is not an industry where you go to make money. So don't go thinking that, that this is a place where you're gonna make loads of money. However, there are some countries, for example, in the Middle East, where they do charge or they do pay quite well. Obviously, there are different restrictions and different constraints. And you also have to keep those things in mind. I'm actually going to link down below a great website that has all the different brackets and the places where they're hiring in different regions of the world. The main thing you also have to think about with your pay is, are there any type of allowances that you're gonna get? Is lodging being provided? Most of these places don't necessarily have that, but for the most part, Asian countries, they reimburse you sometimes for your flight and sometimes they don't. But those are things that you can negotiate in your contract. Also, you may want to think, is this money going to be tax-free? There's certain countries that are exempt. However, the United States is the one country where you actually, if you ever live abroad, you have to pay taxes in the US and also in that country. Second disturbance. Let's see how many we'll have. Okay, so we discussed the pay. Obviously, Saudi Arabia is one of those countries that I think I was actually seriously considering because you can live a really plush lifestyle. However, it's because you have so many constraints. And a lot of these constraints are obviously you can't drive if you're a woman, so you have a driver. Sometimes they even give you a shopping allowance and things that might be appealing to you. So those are factors that if that's what you really want, that's a great way to pay off your student loans. And also I believe it's one of the countries where it's tax-free. And just keep in mind with the whole tax situation, because that is always going to be a factor in whichever country that you go to. Another would be the perks. Obviously, for me, I didn't really think it all through with all the perks. There are several countries who give you some sort of subsidy or some sort of allowance for your lodging, reimbursements for your airfare, perhaps a car, or just certain things that facilitate you getting around in that country. But more and more every day, those are it's actually getting smidge almost to none. Really the perks I think in my opinion, has to do with the goal of what you want to get out of it, teaching abroad. So those are things that you're definitely going to want to start keeping in mind when you're looking for places or for the place that's the best fit for you. The other one, I would say lifestyle is obviously a major component, and you definitely have to think about this because I don't know, and especially in the Western world, we tend to overwork ourselves and burn ourselves out. I mean, I had a quarter crisis and I was ready. I had a great job in the States, and honestly, I could have probably done more, but I got so burnt out, my own fault, and I accept responsibility for that. But I got so burnt out that I wanted to try something different and something else. And I didn't really care about the money. What I really cared about was having a quality of life. So you also want to start looking at the different types of lifestyles in each region or in each country that you could perhaps have. Also, to think about if your holidays are paid. Some countries, they don't pay your holidays. Most of the European countries, they do pay your holidays. And then other Asian countries, sometimes they have such a rigorous schedule or timetable, whichever you'd like to hear, that pretty much you're working, if not more, than you would be in the States or in Canada or elsewhere. So you also have to take that into consideration and just think, is this really the kind of life I could lead? If you're a type A personality, maybe being in a chillax place is not necessarily I probably wouldn't pick Spain, because they go with the flow. They do different things. So you always have to think about those factors. And I think that sometimes people just look at all the beautiful places and possibilities of where you could go, but they don't think about, hey, I'm going to live here and I got to do like the Romans do. So that's one of the things that you want to think about. Also, like eating hours. Could you cope with the eating hours? Could you, is it safe for you as a man or a woman? Or even being an American now, let's just face it, we're not exactly very popular people. And realize that certain things that you read out there, you can read as much as you want, but they are going to definitely have some sort of influence, but everybody's attitude and also outlook on life is going to be very different experience. So you just want to take everything in with a grain of salt, but it's definitely a component that you want to think about when you're looking for a different place or a location where to live. Well, as you can tell, and I'm a newbie at this, I thought I had recorded the language portion of of one of the reasons why you should how you should pick your location carefully, but it's been a really long day, and well, things happen. So one of the common things I always hear is the language. People come and want to really learn that language and want to perfect it, and I feel that people have this misconception that they just can come 1 year and then all of a sudden, bam, you are fluent or you are bilingual. It doesn't happen that way. The only way that you can actually let that happen is if you're persistent and consistent. It's the same thing like when you're teaching. And I think that one of the things that if that is your main goal in moving abroad is to invest in having a tutor and also doing language exchanges, because language exchanges will help you with the colloquialisms of that country. I think that having the tutor helps you have that formal training, and also that could explain it to you in a different way, and they're usually trained. The other thing is that you learn a lot about language. You learn a lot about your own language too, because we are not taught English the way others are taught. We mimic our first language, and I think that's also one of the challenging things about it. But it's also one of the great things about it that you are challenged by learning how to actually teach a language that is your native language to someone who has never heard it before. But the main thing with language is to be patient. You're not always going to get it on the first try, and it's okay. Don't let that be something that deters you, but you just have to be persistent and consistent. And also, I think I really want to stress that the language exchanges, sometimes they can be a bit shady, but it's great as well because that person can teach you a little bit about the culture, and the culture allows you to understand the thought process behind the way that things are said and why things are said a certain way. And I think that that's extremely important in learning a new language, which will bring us to the next one, or the next discussion, which is actually culture. And then culture and language, like I mentioned before, language and culture are obviously intertwined. You're never really prepared. I think it's kind of like any life-changing thing in your life, whether you get married or have babies, or you move into a new house, or you move to another country, because I think it's a very ballsy thing to do, to just put your things in a suitcase and say, okay, let's see what happens. It's one of those things that it is a life-changing experience, and as much as you read about it, you don't really know, and people have their own perspective and their own attitudes about it because of their own beliefs and their own values that they bring to the table and what they have in their life. But one of the things with culture that I think I stress a lot is to question things, but not to question in a matter where it is necessarily like, but why? I think it's important to also be open enough to listen. You don't have to agree with it, obviously, but listen more and speak less, and see the good and the bad and how things are done, and also try to see similarities of how you can kind of compartmentalize and kind of equate it in your brain. But at the same time, it just helps you through the whole process, and being more open and listening, and not just saying, well, they just don't do it this way, or why is, I think it makes it a much more pleasurable experience, and you also get more out of it, because let's face it, nobody wants to be around someone who's negative all the time and talks negatively. Yes, things are different, but that's also, I think, the beauty in things, that you can have a difference of opinion and still state it, and still be able to appreciate somebody else's difference. And also that helps you understand your students as well. And the other thing, other thing I would say, learning the country's culture. People, I always find this really fascinating that they go to a place and they don't read up, or like, even if you don't know the details, but just know kind of, okay, this happened this time, this happened this time, because you'll be able to see how the people have been affected by that. If you don't know the history, how can you help them move forward? So also it helps you navigate through nonverbal cues of like what this person is trying to say to you or not trying to say to you, or also you just tend to experience that culture in a different way. And it also allows you to take a look at your own culture and reflect like how you do things. But you have to keep that in mind, that learning that history and learning the culture is super important, just because sometimes being, I guess, like a nomadic teacher, like I like to call it, it can be a very lonely experience, because you can be in your home country and you could be immersed and feel very, comfortable in a certain place, but it is a very lonely experience. And sometimes you feel that nobody understands you, and then you go back home and you're so excited to be back home, and then sometimes you feel like nobody understands you there either, and you're just kind of, you don't know where you belong. So sometimes you have to be aware of okay, well, I'm gonna be different. And this whole experience will change you, whether it will make you more open-minded or more closed-minded. Usually, I find it makes you more open-minded, but it definitely allows you to see things in a completely different lens. And it's just important to keep that perspective and to be as open as possible and to learn, because I think that's the main reason we're all here. And last but not least, I think teaching conditions. A lot of people, this is one I hear about a lot, but the best antidote and the best, I don't know, advice I give people on this is, one time I had a boss who asked me, Lynnette, are you rock or are you water? And he goes, I need you to be water. I need you to go with the flow. Every country has their own flow and has their own type of order. And even though it may seem, there's playing outside. And even though it may seem that it's disorderly, it actually has rhyme and reason in that culture. So it makes sense to them. And you have to keep in mind that being in that situation, you're the foreigner, so you have to be flexible and just kind of be like a water in a stream. Just go with it. Also, so this is going to be a rough video. I know I'm going to get all these critics. I don't really care. And horrible lighting. Oh well. It doesn't matter. Well, in conclusion to this, I kind of wanted to make this video because it's so much to write about and so many different ways you could go about it that it would be just exhausting to read. So I thought the video would be better. I was very lucky that when I picked my country, I understand now why I was always attracted to coming to move here and to learn the culture and experience it. But also, I think the best thing is just to keep in mind that you're the foreigner in this country and that you're the only one that's foreign. Nobody else is. So you need to kind of just go with the flow. And also that a lot of things that when I was researching, I would see a lot of the pretty things, and people would discuss about certain things and also be either extremely negative or extremely positive, but there was never in between. And I'm just one of those people that I don't agree with having such, I don't know, polarized views, because nothing in life is black and white. And it really just depends on your perception, and I understand that also what influences is your environment, but I also have noticed that there's a lot of romanticized ideas of moving abroad, and the truth is it takes a really ballsy person to do it, and sometimes ballsy people don't think, because if we did think about it, we probably never freaking do it. So maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, I'm going to link down below my website where I kind of give you a little bit of my background. And also, prior to this, there would be a post discussing the things that could probably dissuade you or persuade you to go teach abroad. So it can go either way. I kind of wrote it that way on purpose. But there also will be a teacher's corner. So it's going to be kind of like a sense of community for teachers that teach abroad, or even teachers that, it doesn't matter. I would just like to hear your, lesson plan ideas, or even anecdotes of what you've learned in another country, just to kind of help other people that are thinking about embarking in a situation like this. And because I think it's been one of the greatest decisions of my life, but it's also been one of the most trying ones. And I hope that this website, and if you like this video, even though it's going to be a rough video, if you like this video, go ahead and click subscribe, and there'll be a lot more, maybe, hopefully not so rough. I'm getting new at this, but I usually like to perfect. I usually get better and better. I'm a very ambitious person. So we'll see you next time. Bye.